Hi all, Joshua Steger here from etfadvisor.com.au, and today I'll do my usual weekly rundown of the Aussie ETF market and what investors should be watching in the week ahead. So as you can see, we've got the subscription email out to subscribers, and we've got some good key ideas this week to follow what it was a big week last week as well. So clearly there's a lot more happening in investment markets than what you can just see in the Aussie market. So I'd certainly recommend anyone who's interested to sign up for a free 30-day trial, and you can see that in the links in YouTube. So let's get started. Here we've got Bitcoin. So obviously Bitcoin's been the key idea. It was the key idea last week, and it moved out nicely this week. So as you can see, we had this, and the reason we were watching this was just that sheer strength out of the tariff correction. And it set up a really nice consolidation and finally moved out this week, and the volume's been quite good as well. So just creeping up into new all-time highs. And yeah, that's a big step change. So that's going to create a lot of opportunity in different types of the market. In particular, so it's not just the Bitcoin price, but also all the companies that are operating within that Bitcoin space. So we've been talking about this for a while. And you've got CRYP, so BetaShares Crypto ETF, and this holds a range of companies that are operating within that, digital assets and crypto space. And you can see that really nice base, and it's just pushed out, and it's followed through, pushed out recently and followed through this week. And certainly expect far more action if the Bitcoin price continues to creep up. So it's really anyone's guess where this could go. Just given the momentum that's underway in that space at the moment. So for investors, we're pretty happy to have got a good position at a good price, and now we just let that run. So yeah, that was the big move this week. But let's just start with some of the broader markets. Obviously, looking at the Aussie index here, the ASX 200, and you can see not much progress at all. It's kind of just chopping around, and it's evidence that there is a bit of rotation going on in markets at the moment. So a bit of selling in financials and a bit of movement of money back into resources. So here we've got the financials, OZF, financials ETF, and you can see that's where the dividend was paid. And then along with CBA, which has held up this index quite a lot and obviously contributed to this significant rally, is that it's slowly starting to creep down. A bit of selling, so that selling for the Aussie market has started to come into resources. So here's MVR, which is the resource index, and this one in particular, this ETF in particular, doesn't have such large exposures to BHP and Rio. So this is probably the one that I like to watch to get a bit more of a feel for what's happening, in that broader resource space. And you can kind of see that it's held this 50-day moving average twice and is kind of creeping up. And we've also had some quite big kind of step changes in the global market, for resources and materials. So the big news this week was, firstly, was copper. So we'll just have a look at the copper price here, where Donald Trump has announced a 50% tariff on copper in the US, and that just caused quite a significant one-day spike. I think one of the largest one-day spikes in history, and now that's kind of consolidating. And what I found interesting was that the copper stocks didn't necessarily follow that move just yet, but it's certainly something to watch. So here you've got Wire, which is the copper, basically copper, an ETF of copper stocks, and you can see that's one that we've been watching the last few weeks as well, and it's setting up a nice kind of consolidation here. Thought it might go this week, but it actually sold off a little on that tariff news. But that's no reason not to keep a really close eye on this, and this could be quite a significant mover going forward along the lines of what we've seen in gold. And we've also had a big move in silver as well on Friday in the US. So silver finally moved out. I think that's new all-time highs as well. So I didn't think silver could do anything with, if gold was going to be weak, but gold has actually been holding up really well, and that's allowed silver to kind of consolidate here. So obviously it's pushed out here, consolidated really nicely here, and then pushed out on Friday in the US, and good volume as well. So there is a bit of a step change where it's now moving, gold, that all the action was in gold. So obviously you can see that huge rally that we've had, and now it's just consolidated and just, every time it looks like it's about to sell off, it just holds in there. So that's quite interesting, but just this kind of constructive action has allowed, things like silver to pop. And now, we're starting to move into other types of base metals. So copper in particular, as I said, is going to be a really key one to watch. And copper will impact also the Australian dollar as well. So you can see the Aussie dollar is kind of creeping up here a little bit against the US dollar after, that tariff correction and just being generally quite weak, but it has started to creep up. But on the flip side, we also have to be a little bit careful of the US dollar as well. And it almost feels like it's starting to bottom out here after what's been a pretty terrible start to the year for the US dollar. But it looks like it might start to bottom. In which case, I don't expect the Aussie to move a whole lot here, particularly if the US dollar strengthens, even if copper and other base metals start running. So that's something to keep an eye on as an Aussie investor, because a lot of the ETFs are priced, particularly the international ones, in US dollars. So currency does have an impact. Let's go back to the market. So obviously, as I said, the Aussie market not doing a whole lot, and we've got a bit of rotation under the surface. So that means, for those general broad market ETF exposures, the core ETFs, the pre-built diversified ETFs, you're probably not going to get a lot of action. But where the action is underlying, and there's some really key themes that are playing out at the moment. Here you've got the Aussie Tech Index, so not doing a whole lot. We've already quickly spoken about money coming out of financials into resources, and you can see that with BHP finally getting some buying after being, and this is still in quite a significant downtrend and certainly hasn't broken out of the trend line yet, but that's the first sign, I think, along with that copper tariff, that things are starting to change a little bit in that resources space, and people are starting to get worried about supply, and particularly of key and critical minerals. So Rio, after a really bad month and a half, has finally found some buying, up against that 50-day moving average now as well. So that's, I think, a really key thing to watch for the week ahead if that rotation continues. Another key thing that happened this week was in the US, we had so the Department of Defense has done a deal with MP Materials, which is their largest rare earth miner in the US. And that caused a 50% rally in one day in the share price, as you can see, 50.62%. So that's another big step change. So not only have we got the copper tariff, but we've also now got the US, using government money to secure supplies of rare earth minerals. So that's a key step change once again in that materials and resources space. And we can see that play out with a couple of the ETFs here in Australia. So let me just find it. You've got XMET. So XMET is, I'll just take you to their website. So XMET is a energy transition metals ETF. So basically it has exposure to a range of different assets within, or materials and resource kind of miners within the, particularly in the electrical space. So here you've got the largest holding, obviously MP Materials, but also this is rare earths, silver, copper. So it's got, and also lithium. So that's something as well to keep an eye on. It looks like lithium might be bottoming out as well. So what we could see, so yeah, here's global producers of copper, lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, manganese, silver, and rare earth elements. So as you can see, XMET, that's actually pushed into new all-time highs for this ETF, considering it only listed late 2022. You can see it's just been in this big chop zone and nothing's happened until just recently, where it's popped its head above, this kind of resistance, and that's actually a pretty nice base. We'll see how it plays out from here, but at new all-time highs, and as I said, with those key step changes in the global market for commodities and resources, I think this is a really key one to watch. Another one is ACDC, which has been listed a lot longer. So going back to, let's just have a look. It's actually been on the market since 2019. But you can see this ACDC is somewhat related to XMET, but it's probably more so to do with battery tech and in particular lithium, which has been a really terrible place to be the last year or so. So after having previously been a really big winner. So ACDC as well, just starting to look really interesting. So this is the first time in a long time that we're starting to see some of these material stocks look interesting, look viable. So that's something to keep an eye on. And if that rotation continues out of, say, tech, financials, things that have had a really good run and are probably overvalued here, and money starts flying back into resources, we know most managed or fund managers are underweight resources. So this could really get a bit of steam behind it, and in particular, the guide there is what we've seen with gold, and that was has been a huge rally and caught a lot of people off guard. So who knows, that could happen in copper and a lot of the other base metals. So that's something that we're keying in for subscribers and keeping a very close eye on how that all plays out and what the best ETFs are to play that. So just go back through. We've got oil not doing a whole lot, so certainly not the way to play that energy theme at the moment. It's not oil. It's going to be more so those energy materials, but also uranium as well. So we've got a key idea in uranium that we're watching for subscribers, and I think that's going to be a multi-year investment for us. And as I said, that's, I think, a really key space to keep a close eye on as well. And there's a few different ways to play that theme from Australia using ETFs. Let's just have a quick look at the volatility index. You can see it's not popping up at all. So it's actually just creeping down to kind of, certainly they'll be approaching probably 3-month lows. So probably showing a little bit of complacency as well, considering where markets are. So let's have a quick look at the S&P, and you can kind of see we did get a new all-time high this week, but it's just kind of, it almost feels like it's running out of steam a little bit, and we certainly expected that once it would have hit new all-time highs. We kind of got that pullback, if you see on the weekly chart here, but it's just a matter of it's crept higher, and what's the catalyst for this to keep moving, particularly now that tariffs seem to be in front of the newspapers and whatnot at the moment. So just be a little bit cautious on these broader indexes. I think a little pullback here would be perfect, and that would set the best buying opportunity now, where you're probably looking at globally most countries will start cutting rates again, whether inflation's gone or not. So that's something that could certainly be the fuel for the next rally later in this year. But at the moment, just be a little bit cautious. Once again, here's the NASDAQ creeping higher, and you kind of got a marginal all-time high again, but it feels like it's running out of steam. And looking at some of the underlying parts of the market, there is a bit of weakness around, and it's actually shown up in a couple of the ETFs. So here we've got HACK, which is cybersecurity. So this is the cybersecurity ETF, and you can see very constructive action. There was the distribution, and it kind of hasn't recovered that, and actually had a bad close to the week. And you can kind of see there's a bit of selling creeping up. I mean, it's still within that kind of constructive zone, but we'll keep a close eye on that. But that's the first sign of a broader ETF starting to sell off. And another one was game as well. So this is video game ETF, which has been an incredible mover the last couple of years. And you can see there was that base, just showed incredible strength out of that tariff correction. I mean, it basically can't even see the tariff correction anymore, because this was one of the first to move up, and it's crept higher. But now, we've had that distribution. Then you've had some back-to-back selling this week. So that's, as I said, HACK and game are two examples So it's esports and video games and cybersecurity, where we are seeing a bit of profit taking, probably a bit of rotation, as I said, into resources and other areas which have been really sold off. Another example of that would be, I'll just see, Cure in the so this is basically biotech and healthcare, and this has been a kind of terrible space for 2025 and just sold right off. Clear downtrend, but this appears to be getting a bit of money at the moment, so that's where we could be getting a bit of that selling in, say, things like cybersecurity and the video game stocks, and that might be flowing into things like, you know, the biotechs and healthcare space, which really hasn't done well. So that's, as I said, rotation in the Aussie market, and certainly looks like some rotation in the US market as well. The other key thing for this week to watch is few other key items. I mean, we've already gone about 15 minutes, but I'll try and make it quick. So firstly, we've got Europe actually got a bit of buying. So we've been speaking about the last couple of weeks that it's kind of been a month and a half just chopping around near those previous highs, but it had a bit of buying which was sold into, but I'll be interested to see which way it goes from here in the week ahead. And a strong market in the Europe is a good sign for you know, broader market rally and where the action's not just all in the US. So that's something to watch. The Indian market, which we've been talking about for quite some time, little slow this week, but still very constructive. So there's a couple of ways to play that in Australia, so keep an eye on that. Japan had a little pop last week, and it's kind of held this week, so we'll see how that plays out. But the Japanese economy, much like the US, has a lot of debt, so we just have to be quite careful with that. And the currency can move quite quickly, so you've got to be quite careful. The other big move this week, and really interesting, is China. So it's been in this is the A50, China A50 index, and you can see it had that, you know, initial rally where they announced stimulus late last year, and then just kind of hasn't done anything. There's your tariff correction, kind of popped up, but finally just put its head above this kind of resistance, this trend line here, got sold into. But I'll be really interested to see how that plays out this week, because the Hong Kong market's actually looking really constructive as well. So this is the Hang Seng Hong Kong market, and you can see there's your tariff correction, and it's just been, you know, consolidating and tightening and tightening and tightening. So it's looking, you know, like it's building that energy to, you know, move out into kind of 52-week highs. So we'll be keeping a really close eye on that. And as I said, there's some key ways to play that in Australia using ETFs. So unfortunately, we don't have a China small caps ETF, but this is one in the US, and this is what I watch as well for a bit of indication of what's happening. But that is actually creeping into very close to those 52-week highs, which is, if you have a look on the weekly chart, there was a stimulus announcement, and it's kind of consolidated and actually looks really quite constructive as it starts moving out of here. And that's where the action has been in Hong Kong at the moment. So keep a very close eye on that as well. So there's a few things to watch this week. Basically, we want to see if that rotation continues. We've had some, as I said, big step changes. So you've got that copper, you've got that rare earths play in the US, where the government's invested in a rare earths mine. And now we've got Bitcoin at all-time highs. So there's quite a few different elements kind of playing out here, but they're not playing out in the broader indexes. They're kind of happening in those sectors and themes underlying the broader indexes, where we can play with ETFs. And we've certainly got a good, as I said, I think we've got 8 key ideas this week, and none of them are indexes, like broader in-country indexes or anything like that. They're all sectors and themes. So basically watch materials and resources and see if we get more rotation there. Watch Bitcoin and watch China. I think we're going to have a pretty big week. And as I said, hopefully we've got all the details out to subscribers in the email, and hopefully they're ready to profit in what could be a really nice week ahead. As I said, despite probably no action really expected in the bigger indexes. Thanks for listening. As I said, if you're interested, sign up for a free 30-day trial to the subscription email, and you can find the link in the show notes.